More than a decade after the al-Qaeda terrorist attack on the United States, a new report is raising questions about what role the Saudi government may have played in its planning. The New York Post ran this blockbuster op-ed by conservative columnist Paul Sperry explaining that President George W. Bush censored 28 pages from a congressional report on the 9/11 attacks, and that those 28 pages provide, quote, incontrovertible evidence, unquote, that Saudi government officials helped the hijackers both logistically and financially. Now, this revelation does not come as a surprise to former chairman of the Senate Select Intelligence Committee, Bob Graham. Graham has been raising the alarm about official Saudi involvement in 9/11, including this HuffPost blog from September 11, 2012, in which he too notes those censored 28 pages. And we are now pleased to welcome Senator Graham on HuffPost Live. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
And thanks for joining. Now, you chaired this joint inquiry into the 9/11 attack in 2002, so you presumably know what's in these censored 28 pages. Is this correct?
That is correct. The congressional investigation was carried out by the House and the Senate Intelligence Committee. I was the chair of the Senate committee at that time. Congressman Porter Goss, later CIA Director Porter Goss, was the other co-chair.
Now, in those 28 pages, this op-ed that just came out in the New York Post today says it's all ellipses. There's no words, not even blacked out words, just ellipses. And the two sources that the writer had couldn't comment specifically on the country that was implicated in those 28 pages. Can you say which country was implicated in those 28 pages?
No. The document has been classified since 2003, and therefore, none of the people, including myself, who have had an opportunity to read it, are legally authorized to discuss it.
What's it like carrying around that burden of not being able to legally discuss what you saw that perhaps could be very important for the public knowledge?
Yeah, it's very, very distressing to me. This is not just a matter of something that happened a dozen years ago. This has real consequences today. It has real consequences in terms of justice. There are thousands of Americans who were victims of 9/11 who've been trying to secure justice through our federal court system and who have been largely blocked by our federal government through denying them access to information that would be necessary to successfully pursue their litigation and raising sovereign immunity on behalf of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It also is important to our foreign policy. Within the last day or two, a very prominent sheikh of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, former head of the intelligence agency, in fact, has been making very harsh statements about the United States policies on Syria, Iran, and the Middle East in general. Maybe if the American people had a better understanding of just what kind of a perfidious ally Saudi Arabia has been, they would put these comments in a different context.
Now, of course, I noted that Saudi Arabia is the country that it has been implied is in those 28 pages, at least in that piece that we just read, or that is rather in a resource well and I mentioned before. But you just noted Saudi as well on your own. Are you saying then that Saudi is the country that was noted in those 28 pages?
Well, the 28 pages are essentially about who financed 9/11. Saudi Arabia represented 15 of the 19 hijackers in terms of their country of nationality, so it would not be a stretch to suggest that some portion of their financial support for the extended period of time and very expensive activities such as taking flight lessons that they undertook while they were here came from sources that had Saudi Arabia as their origin.
So in essence, is there a claim that the Bush administration had an interest then in protecting the Saudi government here?
It's not too difficult to think of some reasons why the Bush administration would have wanted to protect the Saudis. There was a very long and close relationship at a personal level between the Bush family and the family of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. One example, which is cited in the New York Post article, was the fact that within a couple of days after 9/11, the then Saudi ambassador to the United States, Prince Bandar, met personally with President Bush and apparently convinced him to allow what ultimately became approximately 144 Saudis to leave the United States at a time when much of commercial aviation in the United States was grounded. That's just an anecdote as to the closeness of the personal relationships. Then goes back to a national relationship. Since World War II, the United States and Saudi Arabia have had what is called a special relationship in which we provide them with defense security. They provide us with a secure source of petroleum. That relationship has served both countries well up until the time that it's become questionable as to just what the Saudis' longer-term motivations and aspirations are.
So you had mentioned Prince Bandar in your answer to the previous question, and Prince Bandar was extremely close with the Bush family. Of course, as we knew in Fahrenheit 9/11, they jokingly used to call him Bandar Bush. So is he a bad actor in all of this?
Well, I don't know if he's a bad actor, but he certainly is an actor and has represented the interest of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He was considered to be one of the most effective diplomats in Washington during the years that I was in the United States Senate.
And you're not the only one beating the drum about the Bush-Saudi connection. This was the headline in Showbiz 411. Murdoch's New York Post today backs Michael Moore Bush-Saudi claims from Fahrenheit 9/11. I want to take a quick look at a clip from Fahrenheit 9/11.
All commercial and private airline traffic was grounded.
The FAA has taken the action to close all of the airports in the United States.
Even grounding the president's father, former President Bush, on a flight forced to land in Milwaukee.
Thousands of travelers were stranded, among them Ricky Martin, due to appear at tonight's Latin Grammy Awards.
Not even Ricky Martin could fly. But really, who wanted to fly? No one, except the Bin Ladens.
We gotta get out of this place if it's the last thing we ever do.
We had some airplanes authorized at the highest levels of our government to fly to pick up Osama bin Laden's family members and others from Saudi Arabia and transport them out of this country.
It turns out that the White House approved planes to pick up the Bin Ladens and numerous other Saudis. At least 6 private jets and nearly 24 commercial planes carried the Saudis and the Bin Ladens out of the U.S. after September 13th.
So, Senator, do you feel any vindication, not only from that clip we saw from a movie that came out some years ago, but also from this report that came out today in the New York Post?
Frustration.
I can hear you now, Lisa.
Oh, okay. I apologize. We're having some technical issues with you right now, Senator. I'm just going to, okay, I think we have you again. Please, let me just ask the question again. Do you feel any vindication from this report in the New York Post today?
I wouldn't use the word vindication. I would say that we are seeing a scratching of the surface that I hope is going to lead to, among other things, a release of the 28 pages that have been censored since 2003. We're going to see an opening up of the investigations that were done in places like Sarasota, Florida, where there's very strong evidence that there was a connection between a prominent Saudi family and 3 of the hijackers who were taking flight training near Sarasota. Those kinds of documents, which are available, some of which I have read, I think will begin the move towards justice for the Americans and others who were the victims of 9/11, and a clarity as to what the United States relationship with the kingdom is.
Now, this op-ed ran in, as we said, the New York Post. Saudi Prince Al Walid is the 2nd largest voting shareholder in News Corp, which owns the New York Post. Are you surprised that they would run an article so critical of both Saudi Arabia and George W. Bush?
Well, I assume that the newspaper has the same kind of separation between its investors and business side and its journalistic judgments as other responsible newspapers would do. So, no, I would not be surprised that some of the equity stockholders of News Corp were Saudis. They are extremely wealthy and diversified. And I would not be surprised that on the journalistic side of the newspaper, they saw that this was an important story and deserved to be known by the American people in the world. Frankly, I wish other journals would be aggressive in pursuing this issue. There are lots of threads out there to be unraveled, and it's going to take a long, long time if we have to fight every step of the way against our own government and some of its most important agencies.
Senator, are you speaking of those threads out of personal knowledge from your time on the committee in the Senate, or is this just your general understanding that is a complicated story?
It's both. There are things that we know, such as we know with a high degree of certainty what happened in San Diego. I think that we know with a reasonable level of certainty what happened in Sarasota. What we don't know is what happened in other places where there were large numbers of the hijackers who lived for an extended period of time.
And when you say we, do you mean the general public, or do you mean including senators who are savvy to and have knowledge of the classified documentation?
I can't speak for what other senators might know, and some of this was not available when the 9/11 Commission was doing its inquiry in 2002. But I have reason to believe that if, for instance, a place like Southeast Florida, where substantial numbers of the hijackers spent most of the time that they were in the United States, that if the investigation that I hope was conducted here was released, I think there would be a new avenue of exploration. The same may well be true of places like Patterson, New Jersey, Great Falls, Virginia, other places where there were substantial numbers of the hijackers embedded prior to 9/11.
Now, Senator, this report comes at a very sensitive time, as you noted, in U.S.-Saudi relations. In today's New York Times, the headline is, Saudi Prince criticizes Obama administration, citing indecision in Mideast. Now, are you concerned that this report will further strain relations with a key, albeit somewhat tense right now, U.S. ally?
Yeah, first, let me make a minor correction to my last statement. It was Falls Church, Virginia, where the hijackers were living prior to 9/11. I think, yes, this will contribute to the fabric of the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia, which I think has been publicly distorted. The impression that's given is that Saudi Arabia has been a very loyal, effective ally of the United States. For instance, we'll turn to the fact that they have allowed us to base our drones in Saudi Arabia for operations inside Yemen. But I think there's another darker side of that relationship in which Saudi Arabia, when it has been seen to be in its national interest, such as to be supporting some of the most radical and hateful entities, madrasas that train young children to hate non-Muslims, agencies that have had a long history of collaboration and financial support to Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. When that side of the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia is known, it's going to cause I think a sea change, a reevaluation of our relationship.
Now, with the Bush administration now out of office some 4 years, what do you want the Obama administration to do regarding these 28 pages? Do you consider this a cover-up?
I think it's a massive cover-up, and it's not just the 28 pages. It's almost every element of this investigation has faced obstacles. For instance, I mentioned San Diego was a place where we knew a lot. We'd know a lot more if the key witnesses had not been hidden and not allowed to be interviewed and their testimony taken into account, probably would have opened up new questions. So this has been a pervasive and thus far effective cover-up of what I think is one of the most significant events, certainly in modern American history.
So you think then the 9/11 investigation should be reopened?
I've been calling for that for a number of years, including in the Huffington Post as recently as last September the 11th.
And here's the story right here on my computer, calling for it reopen the 9/11 investigation now from September 11th, 2012. So then what steps do you specifically implore the Obama administration to take moving forward?
Well, at this point, I would implore them, one, to do what they can do, which is to release the redacted and censored portions of the 9/11 investigation, particularly the 28 pages. Number two, I would urge them to direct their agencies, specifically the FBI, to release documents which are in their possession and which I know from personal knowledge would change the narrative of what happened in significant parts of the pre and post 9/11 tragedy, and make it available to the American people.
Now, how will the United States foreign relations conduct themselves should our relations with Saudi deteriorate over documentation, over revelations that we're talking about today? Should those be made official, where do we look to in the Middle East for allies?
Well, we look first, what kind of allies are we looking for? We're looking for allies with which we truly share common interest and values, and who will be supporting us not just at the good times when we are providing them with billions of dollars for the purchase of their petroleum, but also in the tough times when we're asking them to avoid taking actions that will be detrimental to U.S. interest.
And who are those allies now in the Middle East? I mean, Egypt had its revolution, had its counter-revolution. Iran we're making deals with now to try to get us talking again, but we're still very far away from having.
Well, I think some of the allies that have proven to be faithful to the United States would include, of course, Israel, Jordan, Turkey. Those are countries that, while we may have occasional disagreements, the fundamental loyalty based on common views of the world and the way in which we believe peoples should be treated have sustained during easy times and tough times.
But if the U.S. alliance with Saudi falls apart because of issues such as this and justifiable issues such as this, then what happens to Saudi Arabia? What happens to the sphere of influence that they belong to?
Well, I don't know what they would do or how they would view this, but is the United States now such a servile nation that it has to say, even a country which may have been a co-conspirator in the murder of 3,000 of our citizens, that we can't react in the way that all people with some sense of personal dignity and a sense of honor would do, that we've got to capitulate just because we're afraid of the adverse reaction of the kingdom if they are called to account. That, I think, is what essentially is happening in this litigation that's now going on, where thousands of American families who suffered the loss of their loved ones are being denied justice by the cover-up of the Saudi involvement.
Senator Graham, I want to thank you very, 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 very much for joining us. It was excellent speaking with you. and please do come again, all right?
Well, let me say, I very much appreciate what you and the Huffington Post have been doing. And as I said earlier, I'd call upon other parts of the American journalistic community to see this as it is, a governmental cover-up of one of the most horrific actions taken against the United States from within the United States, and the need to have aggressive journalism to do what it does best, which is to get government to tell the truth and accept its responsibility.
Well, again, thank you so much, Senator, for taking the time to come speak to us about this. This is HuffPost Live. Please do keep watching.